people with a mobility difficulty, a suitable motor car is not just a convenient mode of transport. It can often be the vital link to independence and a more active and fulfilling lifestyle. A car is not just about getting from A to B, it's about being able to get to work and to do all the other things that most people take for granted, a day out in the country being one of them. In short, a car means freedom.
There are more than 165,000 people like Julie who found the road to freedom and independence thanks to the efforts of one organisation. An organisation that has helped to supply more than 350,000 cars to disabled people. An organisation which today operates the largest car fleet in Europe and offers a scheme which is quite unique anywhere in the world. That organisation is Motability, and it exists to help disabled people take up a new lease of life.
What started in the late 70s as an idea to replace these little blue three-wheeler trikes and to help disabled people lease a safe, reliable modern car has now blossomed into one of Britain's largest charities, a charity that has Her Majesty the Queen as its chief patron, and one which can rely on the support of all political parties. During this video programme, we'll be taking a closer look at Motability and how the scheme works. We'll be interviewing the experts in assessing people's transport needs, choosing a vehicle, finance schemes, and we'll be looking at car adaptations. There are many thousands of disabled people and their families who are already enjoying the benefits of Motability membership. So what exactly does it mean to be a Motability member? In essence, Motability gives disabled people the means to lead the same quality of life and to enjoy the same basic independence and freedoms as anyone else. For example, being a Motability member enables people to take up a place at school or college, to travel to work, visit family and friends, go shopping, get involved in sport or leisure activities, basically to carry on being an active member of the community. You may be one of those thousands of people who already know about the benefits of membership. But what if you're thinking of applying for Motability membership for the first time? How do you know if you're eligible for the scheme? Dr. Adrian Stokes, one of the governors of Motability, joins us now from Harlow. Adrian, thank you very much for joining us in the studio. Can you just tell us what the criteria are for membership?
Basically, there is one single criteria. That is that you've got to be in receipt of a government allowance called the higher rate mobility component of the disability living allowance, or as people still call it, the mobility allowance, much less of a mouthful. If you're in receipt of that benefit, or the equivalent war pensioners mobility supplement, you can convert the weekly income from that into funding for a vehicle. In order to get the allowance, you have got to be, as the law says, unable or virtually unable to walk. What that means is that if you're in a wheelchair, you can't walk at all, you will certainly get the allowance. If you can walk, say 100 yards, then you probably won't.
Are there any age restrictions?
Motability itself does not impose any restrictions on age, but the government does to get the allowance. And you've got to be between 5 and 65 in order to apply for the allowance. Once you've got it, provided your disability doesn't lessen, then you keep the allowance for life. Also, of course, you don't need to be the driver. The disabled person who gets the car through Motability may be a passenger and be driven around by other people. The scheme allows up to 2 other people to be nominated to drive, and for example, a child's allowance can be used by parents or guardians to obtain a vehicle on the child's behalf.
Thank you, Adrian. Having established that you're eligible to join Motability, where do you start? Well, first of all, it's wise to find out exactly what you need. That's why Motability suggests that your first stop might be a special assessment centre, particularly if you hope to do the driving yourself, or if your disability is such that the vehicle is likely to require special equipment and conversion work to make it usable. Some people perceive these assessment centres to be extremely formal and even foreboding, but nothing could be further from the truth. They are in fact run by qualified, experienced people who have a genuine empathy with their customers. Most importantly, as Peter and Julie have been finding out, they are an invaluable source of help and information and give disabled people the opportunity to try before they buy to ensure that when it comes to choosing their new vehicle and specifying any adaptations, they know exactly what they're looking for and can choose with confidence.
I think reception is over that way. All right? Have fun. Now, this is just one of the many specialist organisations throughout the country which offer advice and assessment to disabled people. The first step is to call or write to your nearest centre. They'll send you a simple application form which you complete and return. The centre may ask your permission to contact your GP for a professional medical assessment of your disability. This helps them to lay the groundwork for your visit to the centre. They'll then offer you an appointment, which normally takes about 2 hours of your time. But it really is worth every minute, as Julie has been finding out.
Because I would actually like to look at independent mobility, for you to be able to drive on your own, put your wheelchair into the car on your own. So I think perhaps later on today we look at wheelchair
Facilities
loading and
vary,
see what you
but the
can and
first
can't
thing
do
you can
and
usually
what you
expect
can't.
is a warm welcome when you arrive at the centre. More often than not,
Right.
your 2-hour
And,
appointment is made up of
are
2
you able to
interviews.
cross roads
The
in a
first person
wheelchair?
you'll see is a therapist. Amongst other things, he or she will ask you about the type of work you do, your hobbies and your leisure interests, from which they can begin to build a picture of the type of vehicle that would fit in best with your particular
Are you
lifestyle.
able to walk? No,
They'll
so
look
it's
at your
mainly-
joints and your
right.
muscles for strength and
you've got this
coordination.
super quickie.
This helps them to determine the areas in which physically you are strongest and around which they can make recommendations for any special equipment that may be required, power steering being an obvious example.
Out to the side and down and do that again.
Then they take a close look at how freely you can get in and out of the car. They'll help you determine your most comfortable seating posture.
Yeah, we need to get you a little closer to the wheel. I'm going to pull you forward.
On this static rig, they are able to measure your braking strength, your accelerating strength and your reaction time.
Down for brake. Okay, and the moment you've got your hand on the accelerator,
The driving instructor will want to look at how competent and confident you are at using special equipment, such as this push-pull accelerator and brake.
When the car in front stops. On the top you've got the indicator, thumb switch, that's left to left and right to right.
And finally, it's on to the real thing. And here the instructor is looking for the essential practical aspects of being a driver with a disability. For instance, Julie has already shown that she can load and unload her own wheelchair to and from the boot. So now it's time for the drive. Now don't worry if you've never been behind a wheel before. You won't be taken very far. But if you have driven, then the instructor will probably take you on a slightly longer run. So, you ready, Julie?
Right, I'm off. See you later.
Good luck.
Having had the benefit of expert advice, Julie can now get down to the exciting business of choosing a car, confident in the knowledge that she knows what type of car will suit her best and what vehicle adaptations or special equipment she's likely to need. If she goes to a Motability approved dealer, choosing that car should be a pleasurable experience. She can expect to receive professional help in choosing the right vehicle and expert advice on the funding options available to her. Having said that, it's always useful to have an idea in your own mind of how much you want to pay for your car before you start shopping around. For example, the current allowance will cover the cost of hiring a small basic model, and there are quite a few to choose from, for a period of 3 years. The allowance would also take care of insurance, maintenance and road rescue services. On the other hand, if you want or need a larger car with more sophisticated features, like power steering for example, the chances are you'll have to make an advance payment. In cases of proven need, financial assistance may be available from Motability's charitable fund to help with this payment, and of course with any special adaptations the vehicle may require. We'll be looking at vehicle funding in more detail in just a moment, but first let's see how Julie and Peter are getting on in their search for that car.
say I really, really like this car.
So are you going to settle on this one?
Oh, no, I'm going for the red one. Hi.
Hello there again. I take it you're still keen on the Astra?
Yeah, that'd be lovely, but can I ask you a few questions first?
No problem. Pop it to my office and we'll have a cup of coffee and have a talk about it.
Lovely.
Well, in case you're wondering, Julia's already done her homework on this particular model the last 3 times we were here. But would you know what to look for? Well, sufficient stowage space for the wheelchair is an obvious start. And you need to check that the sills and the boot are at a convenient height. And also, that the door opening provides sufficient width for you to get in and out of your car with relative ease. Of course, it goes without saying that you'll want a roomy interior. And what about an automatic gearbox and those useful features that will make your life so much easier? Interior releases for the boot, the bonnet and the fuel filler cap, for example. Central door locking, electric windows, an electric or retractable radio aerial. All of which these days are often standard features on even the smallest of cars. Julie even checked out how easy it was to top up oil, water and washer fluid levels. Of course, all these special considerations are over and above the usual factors we all take into account when choosing a car: reliability, engine performance, design, style, comfort, fuel economy, plus of course the service that you want and expect from a reputable dealer. And having done all that, she was then able to go on to the next stage.
With power steering and the fact that I've chosen a higher specification model with automatic transmission, the price is just above the value of my allowance, which means that I have to make an advance payment. In addition, there is a charge for adaptations to the vehicle, which in my case include the fitting of footplate extensions like this one. But what if you were faced with a similar situation? And what if there was simply no way you could find the extra money? Well, that's where Motability may be able to help.
If you're unable to meet the costs yourself or raise the money in any other way, you indicate this in the appropriate section of the application form. The dealer can help you fill this in. Motability will then send you another form on which you make your formal request for financial assistance. Motability are actively seeking to raise money to assist people at all times, but funds are limited, so priority is obviously given to people who cannot manage to acquire a vehicle in any other way. Your request will be considered on merit by the charity's grant section. But with any luck, you should be motoring quite soon.
So there are the inevitable forms to fill in, but just how much paperwork is involved? And how soon could you expect a response from Motability regarding your application? Motability have made the paperwork as straightforward as it can be. Of course, nothing is perfect, and they're constantly looking at ways to improve things. But in any event, as we've just seen, most dealers will be only too happy to help you cut through what little red tape there is. So let's assume you've completed your application and sent it to Motability. How soon can you expect a response? A question we can put now to John Van Dongen, who is a grant manager at Motability. John.
Hello, Maggie. Well, in answer to your question, Motability has recently published a code of conduct which sets out the standards of service which members can expect from the organisation. Under the code, we undertake to issue documents within 3 working days of receiving a correctly completed application form where no grant or financial assistance is required. Now, quite clearly, in cases where an individual is seeking help in funding their advance payment or vehicle adaptations, this inevitably means that things take quite a bit longer. We do ask people to use this time to save up their allowance towards the cost. I should emphasise that where grant applications are concerned, Motability's aim is to assist with the least expensive solution to people's basic mobility needs. This means that we can help the maximum number of people from the limited funds we have available. What I would also say to all prospective applicants is that if they have any queries or concerns, not just about grant applications, but any aspect of the Motability scheme at all, they can talk to specially trained staff on our Motability customer helpline.
Thank you, John. We'll be giving you that special customer helpline number at the end of the programme. Motability has evolved into a very powerful and influential pressure group for disabled motorists and their families. The Motability scheme today is a market in its own right and represents a major source of new and repeat sales for motor manufacturers and their dealerships. Using that buying power, Motability is able to offer its members one of the cheapest ways there is of obtaining a new vehicle. I'm joined now by Robin Taylor, who, as Assistant Director, manages the administrative aspects of the scheme. Robin, what are the options when it comes to obtaining a vehicle?
Basically, Maggie, there are two schemes, contract hire and hire purchase. Let's deal with contract hire first. By far the most popular of the schemes available, and the one chosen by some 90% of our members. With contract hire, you agree to hire the car for a period of 3 years, which means that to be eligible, you must have at least 3 years of your mobility allowance to run from the date that you pick up your car. At the end of the 3-year period, the car is returned to the dealer, and providing your mobility allowance is good for another 3 years, you can obtain another new car straight away.
So in effect, you can get a brand new car every 3 years?
Exactly. What's more, you don't have to worry about depreciation or part exchanges, and the dealer is happy because he's getting well-maintained, low-mileage second-hand cars with a known one-owner history.
Now, there are cars available on contract hire which can be funded in full simply by paying over the whole of your allowance to Motability for the 3-year period. For that, you not only get the car, which incidentally is free of car purchase tax and VAT, you also get a very attractive discount negotiated by Motability on behalf of its members, as well as insurance, roadside assistance, service and maintenance thrown in. And just for good measure, you may be eligible for free road tax. With many cars, however, an advance payment is necessary. Obviously, if you can afford this initial payment, you'll be expected to put up the money. But if you genuinely can't afford the cost, you can apply for financial help from Motability's charitable funds. And, as we've already seen, in some circumstances, financial help could also be available to help pay for adaptations. There's another very important point to make here. You should bear in mind that whilst certain special equipment such as hand controls, power steering and car-top passenger and wheelchair hoists can be fitted to hire cars, more comprehensive adaptations may be difficult or impossible to remove after the 3-year rental period and therefore cannot be fitted on this scheme. So what does that mean for someone who is severely disabled and requires extensive conversion work to their new vehicle before they can get mobile? Robin.
2 things, Maggie. Firstly, they'd have to opt for the alternative hire purchase scheme. To be eligible for this, they must have mobility allowance for at least 4 years from the date of delivery of their new vehicle. And the maximum amount that they can borrow is determined by the amount of allowance that is used. Secondly, if someone is unable to meet the cost of the deposit or adaptations, they can apply for a grant. This can come from our own charitable fund, or, for people with the most severe disabilities, from a specially allocated pool of government money called the Mobility Equipment Fund. At the moment, however, there is a long waiting list for help from this particular fund. Motability have also negotiated generous discounts with various manufacturers, and most models can be obtained at a very competitive price indeed.
Thank you, Robin. Well, we touched very briefly on adaptations there. But just how much work is involved in converting a vehicle? Let's rejoin Peter and Julie to find out.
Well, Julie and I have been visiting 2 specialist conversion companies to see just how far technology has advanced in the highly specialized field of adapting standard vehicles to suit the unique requirements of disabled drivers and, of course, disabled passengers. And for the very severely disabled person who still wants to drive, how's this for high-tech? An ordinary electric wheelchair, a remote controller, and a converted van packed with electronics and hydraulics that'll allow me to climb aboard and drive without any assistance whatsoever. There we are, open sesame. Now, it's often assumed that if a disabled person is to drive a vehicle, a substantial number of adaptations like these must be made, costing considerable sums of money. Now, whilst this is certainly true for people with very severe disabilities, large numbers of people can be catered for with simple, inexpensive adaptations to a car with automatic transmission, as Julie has been finding out.
That's right. Hand controlling a steering knob or a left foot accelerator pedal may be all that's required to put a disabled person in the driving seat. To travel as a passenger, the car may not even need to be converted at all, and if it does, a standard swivel seat or a hoist may solve any access problems.
Well, now that I'm installed in my wheelchair, locked in the driving position, you can see just how advanced are the adaptations and conversions that allow the severely disabled person to drive. Each vehicle is custom-made to suit the particular disabilities. But in this case, for instance, steering is by joystick, drive control is electronic, the throttle and the brake are on a hand control, and the trafficator control is up here in the headrest. I can turn to the left or the right, and the horn is in the middle.
For those who are perhaps too young or unable to drive, a vehicle like this can mean the difference between being stuck at home and enjoying the freedom of mobility that most of us take for granted. It is in effect a passenger-carrying van derived from a car, in common with a wide range of similar vehicles from the major manufacturers. It is ideal for an access conversion designed to take passengers in wheelchairs, and it could include lightweight ramps, winches, motorised chairlifts, raised roofs, cutaway floors, additional seating and numerous other useful features.
In common with all other charities, one of the most important aspects of Motability's work is, of course, fundraising. With us now is Joanna Lewis, Director of Fundraising at Motability. Joanna, thank you very much for joining us. I wonder, could you perhaps give us a perspective on how important successful fundraising is for the charity and, of course, for the people it serves?
It goes without saying that fundraising is absolutely crucial in helping people who otherwise simply could not afford a suitably adapted car and the independence and freedom that greater mobility can bring. As more people hear about Motability and look to join the scheme, so more people come to us asking for additional financial help.
In many ways, Motability are victims of their own success. As demand has grown, largely through their own efforts and those of the government too, so have the number of applications for financial assistance. Back in 1987, Motability paid out £200,000 in grants. By 1992, that figure had risen to almost £2.75 million, representing an annual growth of some 68%, a remarkable achievement. But now, demand is so high, applications were up by 35% last year alone, the waiting list for grants is much longer than Motability would like, and they do not currently have the funds to help all the people they want to. Everyone at Motability is working hard to change this and raise extra funds. Let's just take a quick look at some of that work. This video is just one example of the many initiatives which are helping to raise awareness of Motability and attract additional, much-needed funds. Motability have also organised special events, like this one at Olympia and the Renault Disabled Karting Championships. And the charity has just recently launched its own magazine, Lifestyle. This is available free of charge to Motability members, and it should attract significant sums in advertising revenue. But if I can come back to you, Joanna, these efforts and the many other activities of the fundraising team are not on their own going to be enough to replenish the charitable fund to the level that everyone would like, are they?
That's right. We're facing a real challenge. If we're going to raise the sort of funds that we need to enable those who have no other way of raising the money to actually get on the road to freedom. We're looking to raise awareness of Motability and the charitable fund through building relationships with companies and individuals who share our aims and can see the real difference it makes to disabled people, the families, and the whole community at large. Usually it takes about £600 to £1,000 to help an individual pay for the adaptations to a car or to buy a larger car to suit their particular needs. We're looking to involve Motability members who would like to help us raise that sort of money to come forward and work with the local fundraising teams. We've got fundraising teams in Manchester, in Leeds, in Birmingham and in London. And if anyone would like to be involved with us, then please do give us a call and we'll get you in touch with the local group.
And here's the number to ring if you'd like to help. 0279 635 666. That's 0279 635 666. We've looked at the part played by assessment centres, conversion companies and motor dealers. But what about the vehicle manufacturers? How do they fit in? We can now go over to John Savage of Vauxhall Motors to find out. John, How do you see the manufacturer's role in the scheme, and what are they doing to ensure Motability members get a good deal?
Well, of course, I can only speak on behalf of Vauxhall, but it is safe to say that all of the leading motor manufacturers on the contract hire scheme are doing a great deal to support the charity and to get Motability members on the road. At Vauxhall, our commitment has never been greater. In common with all the other manufacturers, we actively support Motability by sponsoring fundraising events, attending road shows, and organising open days and seminars. We work very closely with adaptation and conversion companies to ensure that the customer gets exactly what he or she needs.
Isn't it also true to say, John, that the Motability scheme represents a major source of sales income for the manufacturers and their dealers?
Yes, it is. And in view of this, we're in constant negotiations with Motability to ensure that their members get the best possible deal.
John, thank you for joining us. So that's Motability from the manufacturer's viewpoint. But we couldn't end this first video without talking to someone who represents the people who matter most, the members.
It all occurred when I was 11 years old. Being a curious schoolboy, I saw what I thought was a large tin can on a fence, and it turned out when I lifted it up, it was so heavy I dropped it. It was unexploded mortar that they heard 7 miles away and dug a 16-foot crater, so I'm pretty lucky to be around. I lost my left hand through the wrist, my left leg off just below the knee, and my right leg off at the top. So three bits of metal on there instead of the normal bits. When I first started, I had an automatic car, and all I did was to put the accelerator on the left-hand side instead of the right-hand side, and use my leg, my left one, which had a knee, for the accelerator and the brake. And really, that's all I did, and put a ball on the wheel and an artificial hand with a cup in it to steer with. So I could drive it very easily with just those few modifications.
Well, it gets me out of the house.
I call it my babe.
I'm always out in my car. Can never stop. Just love it.
Couldn't do without it.
Well, it's just a job for picking up the dolly birds. Put it that way.
Freedom. It's part of my family.
It gives me the independence I need to live the life I want.
My motor car is my lifeblood, you know. Take that away from me, now I sort of go to bed and stay there with a hot water bottle.
Well, that just about wraps it up for this first video in the series. We'll be giving you the various addresses and telephone numbers in just a moment, so have a pen and paper ready. Make sure you also watch out for future titles in which we'll be tackling things like travelling abroad, making home video movies, designing and constructing gardens, DIY around the house, and a great deal more besides. Until then, it's goodbye. But I wonder what Peter and Julie are up to.
So are you happy at last?
I am, Peter, totally happy. Enough room in the back for the wheelchair, enough room for me to get in and out.
There's also enough room for a passenger, isn't there?
Absolutely. Fancy a lift?
Well, it is getting a bit late. Thank you very much indeed.